you said during the question, it's not worrying about what the bloggers are doing, it's what the audience is doing. What types of things do you see them doing that isn't really being acknowledged or looked into enough?
By mainstream journalism.
Yes.
I'd say the things that I have called it before, it's called social media, this whole area, but I like to talk about intimate media. I do think the audience wants to write about their intimate lives. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily, sexy or whatever. I write stuff about sex all the time, for one thing, but they want to read about what their neighbors are doing and what their friends, where they're going on vacation and what recipes and all that stuff that so often looks like, whose news is that? Who cares? But I think people have a basic curiosity in other people's lives. I think post 9/11, we're actually all still in a place almost traumatic of saying, how are people managing? How are people getting along? What matters? Many of us were shaken and continue to be shaken about what is this world? I don't think it has. Many of the assumptions we grew up with are gone. I think that terrorism, the kind of situations like the tsunami, I think very catastrophic events are going to become much more commonplace. And I do think blogging and all the tools of these intimate medias are somehow creating a way and a context for people to share what their real lives are like. I'm no fan of reality TV, but I think that's the same urge, which is people want to understand how are people living their lives. There's a certain level of just gossip and whatever, people just voyeurism, that people want to know what's going on in the next, house next door behind the curtains, which isn't, laudable. But I think it's more than that. I think it's a community of saying, how are we managing and how do you cope and can you help me learn how? As well as I have probably some of the weirdest relationships of knowing many people through their blogs. I don't get to see them on a given basis. I know David Weinberger well. He lives in Brookline. We live near each other. Do I get to see him often? No, we're traveling and working. But I'll read his blog to find out what he's thinking. And in an odd way, this happens with my blog all the time, I write so much and so often. I have all these friends who don't even call me or write because they know how I'm doing. They read my blog and I'll be like, wait a minute, I used to get letters from you. What happened? So I think there's something about blogs, which again I think are the very small beginning iceberg. We're going to see lots more. A piece of intimate media that lets us have virtual relationships with a community of people and a community of like thinkers that may be in 7 different countries, but think like you do, and you can find those people now where you never would have before. You barely know people in your own neighborhood. In fact, I think people know less and less about anybody in their own neighborhood, and do know a lot of intimate detail about people that are, in other countries. I find that part very interesting too, what that's going to mean about politics. And I think, can we start a new political party that's all the people that think like I do but happen to live in 12 different countries? Sign me up. I would love that. And what do we do? Do we all go and relocate and create a new country? I don't think so. But maybe we are governed in a way like none of us have a clue what we're looking at. I feel like we're at the end of a lot of traditional organization and hierarchy of how people lived. And vis-a-vis that sensibility of ongoing catastrophic event and tsunami and disaster and ongoing terrorism, all these things, I think we're actually learning to live in completely different ways. I think it's jarring our sense of community. It's changing our sense of what relationships and friendships are. It's changing family. And it's a story I don't think anybody's writing about enough. But everyone will start getting the tools in their hands to write about. So I think it's going to be incredibly interesting. But I think mainstream journalism is really going to be so transformed, I hardly know what it's going to look like. Maybe I don't care, because maybe what I'm really excited about is what it's going to look like to have all those tools in the hands of people. And we see it already with camera phones and people mobile blogging and people, just all the things have gone on with digital cameras where people are making pictures themselves. And I mean, my blog is a magazine. I'm the editor of, I do the features and I do the politics and I do all the different sections. I'm writing different stuff every day. And I think that, and I'd say even about this conference, we have some really well-known A-list bloggers here, but their blogs look like the New York Times. They don't look like what's really going on that's exciting in blogging, in my mind, is taking the software that's created for blogging and doing lots of very different things with it, not at all replicating professional journalism. To me, that's a snore. They've gotten a lot of celebrity and they're well known and they write wonderfully and they're laudable, but what they're not pushing the technology where I think it's going to go. It's going to be going a lot of places, and it's I hear more and more that people don't talk about it is internal blogging within companies that are private blogs. They're like the intranets that we saw develop, and so people sharing their stories and their thoughts within groups and within companies with a level of privacy. Everyone talks about blogs as if they're so out there and bold and no one has any privacy. People write about amazingly explicit descriptions of their lives and everything in their lives, and I agree that's a little too much sometimes, but what it's going to allow for us in terms of creating privacy for groups is going to be very interesting. I think that's another big area we're going to see a change in. Traditional media feels like it is just going to be fundamentally changed to the point of almost not to be recognized. I don't know what role traditional journalists will even have in the world I'm describing. Will they teach people how, as the BBC editor was talking, that they go to villages and they teach people how to produce video and tell stories and all that? That's nice, but you need 3 of those people and 3,000 people in England to do that model. So how does that work exactly? So that's going to be, I think it's really, really exciting, and I think we can't even begin to see. And you saw the adoption cycle on blogs has been from when I started 3 years ago. There were a few 100,000. Now there's 3 or 4 million blogs. So it's unbelievable. And that's one technology. And I think we're going to be, the video blogging and everything visual together with words is the next thing. Together with audio visual, it's going to be, the text-based is going to look like really old hat in another 2 years. So.